I am delighted to welcome our partner, Talkwalker, and their Chief Innovation Officer, Cara Buscaglia, to the stage. She's going to tell you more about this next session.
Great to see you as well. Thank you so much for having us, and good morning and good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. We're really excited because today we have a jam-packed agenda, and we're going to discuss how brands can drive the success in this new age of the now consumer by tackling the most important social media trends of 2022. We have a really great agenda lined up with some amazing panel speakers. First, we're going to give a little bit of an overview of what exactly is this now consumer that we're in, and then we're going to cover the top 3 social media trends that are going to rule in 2022 with our expert panel that we have with us today. And so without further ado, I want to really introduce our panel speakers. So I'm Cara Buscaglia, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Talkwalker, a leading consumer intelligence company that combines a multitude of internal and external data sources with AI-powered Blue Silk technology that really helps us understand the most expansive view of your customers. And then I'm also truly thrilled to be joined by Jillian, who is the founder of Social Intelligence Lab, which is a professional membership community for people who run social intelligence programs at the world's leading brands and agencies. Say hello, Jillian. We're excited to have you.
Hello, I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful. And then I'm so thrilled to introduce a longtime friend and customer at Talkwalker, Jonny Bentwood, who is the Global Head of Data Insights at Golin. And Golin is a leading and award-winning global public relations agency that really helps companies create change that matters. So Jonny, say hello. We're excited to have you on the main stage.
Thanks, Cara. I'm delighted to be here too.
Wonderful. So let's just go into this quickly. I think it's really important to set some context before we dive into the meat, which is the trends. So for the past several years, Talkwalker has actually been producing a social trends report. And one of the major themes that became apparent throughout the report was that we are in the age of the consumer. For the last several years, we've had a clear trend in the influence that consumers have had on brands. And I think we can all agree that the pandemic has really served as a catalyst and really truly accelerating this age of consumer. And this has only made consumers more vocal about what are their preferences, what are their pain points, and really overall raising the bar and expectations for brands. And until today, we've had brands that are more reactive, but now it's necessary for brands to really look forward and being one step ahead of what their consumers need. And I think organizations that truly have this real-time 360 view across their brand, their category, industry, and audiences are not only able to understand what the consumer wants today, but can predict what the customer wants tomorrow. And that's really hard to do. So in 2020, when we produced the report, we saw consumers more influenced on brands' growth around their social media channels. 2021, in the pandemic, it was more necessary for brands to become more customer-centric to succeed in their strategy. And now if we look in the forward thinking into 2022, it's about knowing that we all need customer centricity is no longer optional, but we're seeing a shift because we need to see brands really putting consumers at the driver's seat in order to succeed. And we're going to really dive into the panel discussion, but I just wanted to talk to you about the top 10 trends that are featured here and a little bit about our report methodology so you just understand that. So we leveraged our consumer intelligence platform and we reviewed data past the last 13 months prior to August 2021. And we looked at an aggregated, based on AI, all the different trends that were coming up across news, social media channels, blogs, and forums. And we actually summarized them quite nicely. We're not going to go into all of them here today. We really want to focus on the conversations, but definitely if you're interested, go check out the report. There's some really great information that you can leverage these trends to really become more customer centric and how you can have success going into 2022. But let's dive into, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can have a really thoughtful discussion. with Jonny and Jillian here. And let's dive into 3 of the trends. And one of the first trends that I wanted to discuss with you guys is TikTok. Is TikTok taking over social media? Is it leaving other platforms behind? I don't know if I have the answer, but I definitely check if there's bones or no bones every morning when I wake up in the morning, because I need to know what kind of level of energy I'm getting to my day. But I think we can all agree with all the different authentic consumers on it, it's a channel that we all need to be aware of. I mean, it's grown so significantly since its inception, and has actually grown steadily since 2019. And people were actually flocking to it during the pandemic. And there was a 61% increase in mentions over the last year of new users, and making it the first non-Facebook platform to actually reach 3 billion downloads, which is quite impressive. So Jonny, this first question's for you. What do you think about this trend, and will other platforms have to adapt?
I think there's 2 parts to it. The first thing is an old adage that bears have known for thousands of years that humans have forgotten. You fish where the fish are. So if you're a brand and your audience hangs out on TikTok, then you need to go to TikTok. And that's the first and most important bit. You go where your customers are. But the other important thing to remember is that as generations develop, they don't really want to use the same social tool as the same people 2 above them. So my kids don't want to use Facebook, but I do. So it's a transitionary thing. I think TikTok is important now, but I don't think it's going to be there all the time as the next generation comes through.
Interesting perspective. Jillian, what are you seeing, and how are you advising some of your clients to approach TikTok?
Yeah, so we get asked a lot about analysing TikTok data. So they have it all set up, the APIs there for the advertising now, but we've got a real need for people who are working in social listening who want to understand what's happening on the platform. I think that in terms from what Jonny said there as well, I think we need to remember about what makes TikTok special. And I think a lot of it was the fact that there wasn't that many brands on there to begin with, and we go in to see the actual users, and then the brands come in, and it kind of decimates things a little bit. It takes away some of that authenticity. So I think to move into the space, we need to be really careful that we're understanding the rituals and the language and everything that's going on within there, and not just coming in with our big brand boots and just destroying what's been special about it.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jillian. I always find that all new emerging platforms have this honeymoon phase where, everyone's kind of really their authentic true selves, and then monetization comes through, influencers come through, and everyone becomes a little bit more buttoned up. And we've seen a lot of our customers, and we recommend that they just have to listen, at least to understand how should they participate, what level. Are you seeing, you seeing any of your customers looking to invest, and how could they profit from this new platform?
I think that, so we really deal with the ones that want to analyze the data rather than the people. It's their internal stakeholders will be the ones that would be doing advertising and investing in the platform. I know that there's a real desire, and if TikTok is listening, please start with your social listening API. It's very much in demand. It's the thing that we're asked about more because of how TikTok has come, particularly during the pandemic and things like that as well, and it's changing behaviors, and there's songs that are starting to enter the charts again just as a result because of TikTok and things. People want to understand how it's changing behavior, and while we can get access to some data that's not through an API, there's a real need for people wanting to understand exactly what's going on within there.
Perfect. Well, let's move on to the next question. So one of the next trends that's covered in our part is around social ads and how they will develop in a cookieless future that we're embarking on. And I know we can all agree that Google's looking to phase out cookie tracking in 2023. It's all kind of up in the air what the future of advertising means, and how brands are going to really balance these personalized strategies and need for consent and compliance. So I think what I'd love to hear from you, Jonny, is do you think user-generated content is the way to go from that perspective?
I think that might be a little bit simplistic, but on the ad side of things, what we have seen, as well as the demise of cookies, is that people skip ads. People skip them on YouTube, they fast forward them on the TV. Ads are getting harder and harder to buy people's attention. They use ad blockers. People just miss them completely. I'd go as far to say as the day of the ad is virtually gone. There's only so long you can buy people's attention. What this means is that you need to earn people's attention. A good story that is earned will always work well on paid to amplify that message, but it doesn't work the other way around. So I think the days of ads, it can be better spent.
Jonny, are you seeing any brands that you can speak to that are doing that well?
I think there's loads of brands that are getting great earned attention. You saw Crayola, who created an incredible product, changing the colours of the crayons to every colour of the skin. And that got amazing attention. It wasn't advertising. It was a great earned idea that everybody talked about. So yes, earned ideas will always work well. Advertising is used to push your attention, push your brand in front of people's eyes. Now you need to earn that attention as more and more people just skip past the ads.
I love that crayon example. It reminds me of the great campaign that Lego just did with Everyone is Awesome. And I thought that was a great campaign about standing behind brand inclusivity, which I think is also an important trend that brands needs to really pay note of, like having brand purpose. And then they followed up with it with another campaign around removing gender bias from their toys. So I absolutely agree. And I think there's a lot of ways that you can amplify while creating positive mentions in the world. Jillian, any examples from your end or how brands could leverage consumer insights to create more relevant content?
Yeah, I think that the key crux of all of this is that you need to understand your audience to be able to create these earned moments. And there's a bit of a difference here, because what we tend to find when we're doing social intelligence type work, social listening type work, is the brand always wants to understand what's happening with the brand. But if you do that, you only really serve your own customers a little bit better. To be able to kind of go and amplify and get a larger audience, you need to understand more about what's happening within the market and within the category and within society in general. And social data is a really great mechanism for doing that. You just need to go beyond the brand to really get all of the extra benefits from it and see what's happening within each of these. But consumer insights is where it's at for that.
Of course, and obviously, I think social is a great source. It's one of the world's largest panels that you can leverage at your fingertips, but obviously it's not the only source. Jonny, are you leveraging any other data sources that you can speak to that can help understand more consumer insights to create more targeted campaigns?
I think it's really important that you don't just focus on one technology and think that's everything for customer insights. What I'd prefer to do is get multiple sources. So get the audience intelligence from places like Global Web Index or Comscore or Talkwalker or Axiom, or look at clickstream metrics, a rarely used, exceptionally powerful tool to understand what audiences go to after they read an article. What websites do they visit? Where do they return to? What apps do they download? So there's amazing technologies out there that you can put and leverage within your data stack to really understand your audience. And you should never just assume that one audience is the same as another one. Always do the insight first.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I don't know, I just want to say, I think about insights in general, and you mentioned technology there and what technology can do. We always advise us to think about what it is that you're trying to do and then find the partner support in there. Because what we're seeing is that people are adopting some technologies and the potential of them is huge, but they just don't know quite how to action them internally or make that work for them internally first. So we're sitting with a pile of tech that doesn't get used and it's just sitting as a budget line. Whereas if we need to kind of be able to work in that potential and just understand what it is that we're trying to do before we're bringing it in.
I think that's key. You have to have an objective, right? All these technologies are not crystal balls. We wish they were, honestly. It would make all of our lives easier, but it really is about understanding what your objective is. And I'd love to shift to the third trend that we'd like to focus on for the final component of this great panel is the post-pandemic content and how that will shape the needs of the consumer. I think we've all had to adapt during COVID-19. to different rules and challenges and customer relationships and brand building during the pandemic. I mean, how many times did you see someone post their bread making routine? What's your bread schedule? How are you making bread? I think everyone was a bread influencer last year. And I'm not saying that that's like the wave for 2022, but I do think all bets were off last year, during the pandemic. And social media is and still is an integral part of the lives. And I think the pandemic drastically increased this usage and acted as a catalyst across the world. I mean, I think there were over 500 million more people using social media at the same time last year, and indicating a 14% year-over-year increase. So in order to remain visible to potential customers, brands really need to go more of a local and targeted approach. I think that was a big common trend that we're seeing. I think it's really important to create specific content for different groups around location, gender, what their interest is, and not just, the age and demographics, even looking deeper, like what affluent millennials looking for versus stay-at-home moms or moms with newborns or moms with toddlers. Everyone needed their own message. So I'd love to hear about how you guys would recommend how companies can leverage their own data to create more personalized experiences.
So I'm going to be a little bit contentious here, Cara. I think
perfect,
you
Jonny.
talked
I've been
about
waiting for that.
we talked about how everyone is stuck at home and how there's been that increase in social media. Well, you know what? It's more than that. People have been looking for affirmation of their views. It used to be that people got their views by where they lived and who they hung out with, but now people are hanging out in social media bubbles, these echo chambers. And what it's doing is it's creating increased tribalism. We have seen more polarization of different communities than ever before as people reaffirm their values by the media in which they listen to that reaffirms their values, and they then amplify it and solidify their opinion. This tribalism is causing huge problems that you can measure it as we have done on a macro level or on an individual issue level. So how do I think post-pandemic? Well, I don't think we're post-pandemic yet, but we have to acknowledge this increase of polarization and how marginalized and tribalistic different communities are. To me, that's the biggest learning and what we need to take into effect moving forward.
I agree with that. And I would say that, again, if we want to think about this, and we need to look beyond our brand into the industries and society and categories in general, and it will pick up some of this when you start to go through that process. But by just focusing in on the brand itself, you're probably not going to get everything that you would do if you started to broaden out. But integrating the brand's own data sources within there. So we're seeing more people integrate call center transcripts with social data. We've got survey results coming into social data. There's chatbots and things like that. So there's huge potential. But my thing, and what we advise and what we see a lot of, is the minute that people start combining all of these data sources together, they think about them as one data source. It's not one data source, it's multiple different data sources that are good for different things. So you don't need to take everything for every question that you're answering all of the time. It's about understanding more about that data source and what it's useful for.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's important to break down the silos of these data sources to get a full view of your consumer and your customer combined, because there's signals that can be leveraged across both, but they have a different methodology and a different communication pattern that needs to be analyzed. So, well, guys, we can keep talking about this polarization issue, because I do think it is a very interesting one to speak to. Jonny, I know you guys are working on some big projects upcoming around polarization and how you can harness the power of knowing what these different tribes and groups are. Do you want to speak to a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the concept of polarization isn't new, but when people have looked at it in the past, they've analysed several hundred people to understand how they're thinking. But now what we can do is we can look at millions of data points. Big data is really coming to its fruition now. We can understand what the different media is saying and who is amplifying that message to really understand which of those messages are getting most polarized by looking at the content and seeing how extreme that is. This hasn't happened before, the ability to analyze such huge amounts of content. And to me, that's fascinating.
I think even like what's happened in the world, right? There's so much controversy. We're all so polarized. I think wherever angle we go, whether it's every media source, right? You go watch the news, you're getting different views of the world. It's hard to find an unbiased content anymore. Jillian, are you feeling that same kind of trend permeate through your work?
Yeah, definitely. There seems to be, and even people will say, oh, if particularly with political things, so it's left wing and it's right wing, and I've been reading this here, and I think everybody's becoming more and more aware of it. And there seems to be a trend that everybody wants everything to be controversial all the time, because that's the thing that gets the button clicks, which isn't, and clickbait and things like that as well, which is causing some more controversy and things, because it gets people to click, and that's what people are, the metrics that people are being measured on, is how many people are sharing and viewing that content, which is making things more polarized as well.
I get that, and so from that perspective, how do you navigate that as a brand, right? How do you go into these conversations that are highly polarized and not upset consumers, whether retweeting the wrong post or positioning the wrong message? It's become even harder, I think, and that's why I think we've also seen a huge amount of a lot of similar advertising and similar tweets, and it's almost turned into everyone's too scared to be different, and consumers are starting to see through everyone's kind of taking the same safe approach, and it's no longer enough. So how do you take a risk but not offend at this point?
Well, I think it's really interesting. Forrester came out with a survey saying that the majority of customers would change their brand preference if it aligns with the way that their brand actually operates. So this goes down to the brand understanding their audience. Now, if their audience falls across multiple spectrums, yes, they do need to be cautious. But if they've got quite a conservative audience, well, maybe they can go down a more conservative route. But the most important thing is that they are authentic to themselves. They don't just jump on one issue to another issue because they want to be of the moment. Unless they've got a right to speak in that area, they shouldn't engage at all until they've earned that right. Authenticity is still critical as long as you know your audience.
Yeah, I think that a lot of brands have been a bit quick to jump in on some issues, and they're seeing other issues just trending, and they want to get in on that conversation again because the desire for eyeballs and wanting to make sure that they're aligned in certain respects, but it's not coming off as authentic. And there's a lot of kind of greenwashing and things like that going on just now. Woke washing's another thing that you see quite a lot coming through when you're analysing the data. But know your audience and be authentic with it.
Well, I actually think, again, this kind of goes to this age of the now consumer. Consumers are smart, they're savvy, and they're going to call you out when you make that, you kind of join that conversation just to join it, and then you don't follow through. So I think it's authenticity with accountability that's going to really shine through in 2022. A lot of brands made a lot of promises, and I think all of us as consumers are going to hold those brands accountable. Anything Lily else we want to cover? I think let's keep going into this authenticity era. Have you guys seen any great campaigns for authenticity that have come out recently that you think are really? I've personally seen Nike come out with a lot of really great authentic campaigns. I know they saw a bit of a backlash, but I think overall they really showed a lot of great daring behavior throughout the pandemic.
Nike is always good. It's amazing to see that how quickly they jump on exactly the right moment. Sure, they've made mistakes, and I think this is a good learning for many brands. It's okay to make a mistake, but provided you're authentic to your brand ideals, it's fine. I think a lot of people just jump straight in and try and go out there with a cool message without thinking, have they got their own shipping order first? So there's no point in going out there with how diverse you are to your audience if your own board of executives isn't diverse. So I think people need to concentrate on getting their own ship right before they get everything else sorted. And you have a look at brands like Patagonia or Ben & Jerry's, and they've done an exceptional job at this.
Oh, I loved what Patagonia did with the labels. I thought that was quite brilliant.
I don't think I've seen that.
You haven't seen that one?
No, I don't think so.
goodness.
I can't, my memory is not working there. No, I don't think
Oh,
I've seen
Jonny,
that.
you explain it. It's fantastic what they did.
I haven't got it in front of me, so I don't want to ruin how great a job, but I would recommend everyone looked it up.
Yes, it's so amazing. They basically did labels, encouraging people to vote on their labels. And I just think they've just done a fantastic job across this of truly being authentic from that. And so now I'm going to start with some additional questions from the audience and just kind of guide you guys on that from that perspective. So I think this question's coming through. So just let me pull it up while we read it. So any questions around what's the importance you can give to your consumers when they're adapting to products and services?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, what's the importance given to your consumers when they're adapting different, adapting your products or services? And how do you really drive brand strategies when you're launching that? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know if I understand the question properly, so but let me try and answer about that. So it's about adapting your products and services. So
yeah,
like,
to your consumers' needs. How do you do that on the fly to a campaign?
Yeah, so
is the way I'm reading that question.
I hope, yeah, that's the kind of way that I'm taking it as well. So if you're looking to be able to meet your consumers' needs more, so like I know that I'm driving the social data drum. That's what I do. I love it, and you can get a lot from it when you start looking at it. So if you really want to understand about where you can meet their needs better, go in and analyze reviews from all of your competitors and find out what their customers' unmet needs are, and then go and make them and fix them yourself. Pretty easy. It's a great way to get started. You don't need to analyze the earth or boil the ocean or anything. Just go and get some reviews and analyze and find out where other people are having sticking points. That's an easy place to start.
I think it's really key that innovation isn't necessarily isn't led by products. It should be developed by sales and marketing. And that's quite an interesting view, because you'll find that the customers use the product in ways that the product team never even imagined. They can find scenarios that are perfect, that the product team may understand bits and bytes, but don't understand how it can be utilized. Scenario-driven innovation is what is absolutely critical. And this is what I encourage everybody to be doing, because speak to your customers, find out how they're using it, and then think that's our USP. When companies say they've got no competition, it means that they don't understand how their customers are using it. Customers can pick many tools to fulfill many identical scenarios. Even if you can do one specific thing better than anyone else, if it's not used, who cares?
Yeah, the best one that I've seen for this is Pepto-Bismol. I don't think they sell it in the UK anymore, but it's for indigestion. And when we were looking at this, people were using it as spot treatment because it dried out their acne. But nobody knew it. Yeah, it's one of the more fun ones.
New.
Yeah, completely.
That's amazing, and I think I'm preaching here, but there's just not enough of customers of companies putting themselves in the customer's shoes, and I think that's so important to bridge that gap between product and customer. We have another question coming through the audience. Jonny, you mentioned earned ideas. If you're planning a content calendar for 2022, how many of these ideas does a social content team need for planning?
That's like, can you give me a marketing plan or a PR plan? It depends, of course it does. If you think about a company like Walmart, they may have 4 massive launches every single day. Whereas you go to other companies, they may do 4 or 1 a year. I think the important thing is whatever you do it well. Focus and don't just do things on gut instinct. Focus on planning your approach using data-driven insight to make sure what you're doing is smart. Make sure the goals you set are going to make a real difference, and the focus you're doing is going to drive where you need to be within the customer journey. And when it comes to earned ideas, if it's working well on earned, then of course you can boost it with paid, but never start with paid and hope it will work with earned. It never works.
Good advice.
And Jillian, any comments?
I would say just start with one and then work from there. You need to start, trace it out, pilot it, and then work out from there.
Amazing. And I think we've got another question coming through. Maybe Jillian, you want to start with this? What do you mean by community? Both of you actually touched on communities and how they will develop and take an integral role in this. How will they develop? How will they do that? How will they continue to develop and take control of the conversation in these different types of communities that are emerging?
In terms of consumers mobilizing themselves, that's,
yep.
I wish I knew. People, these things change, and they're changing based upon the consumers that are driving them and what it is that they're thinking and feeling, which is why it's super important to be analyzing and watching what those changes were.
Jonny, I know you have a perspective on this.
I think you look at communities like Waves, how I've got a community to drive the approach of what makes the tool valuable. You've got communities that are driving the agenda of political bodies. Communities are becoming powerful because what people have realized now is that individually, people don't have much power, but collectively they are forcing change, and that's fantastic. But I'd always put a caveat, which is brands should be careful of the vocal minority. And a lot of decisions are often made by the vocal minority because it seems overwhelming. So use your data analytics tools to find out whether this is just a large and noisy part, or if it's a small and noisy community that are making a loud difference. So listen to the community and make change, because now you can understand them, whereas previously it wasn't possible.
So before we part, I want to give you a chance to share your key takeaways and the 3 points that you really want our audience to remember when they walk away today.
The biggest thing we take away from this entire experience is, please put your customers at the epicenter of everything that you do. Listen to what they're saying. Incorporate these social media trends in your conversations to find these different tribes, these different communities, these right audiences that you can speak directly to them with relevant content. And I think if you do all of those different things, if you listen to your consumers and you leverage the information and incorporate it into your strategy, I think you'll be successful going into 2022. And I just want to say thank you so much, audience, for bearing through the technical difficulties that we did. And thank you again, Jillian and Jonny. It's truly a pleasure to speak with you. And thank you so much for everyone tuning in.